If you've seen John Wick, you know that it can be a bit extra. Keanu Reeves plays a man who goes on a revenge-fueled rampage. You may think he is getting revenge for the demise of a loved one, and you'd be partly right. Take a moment and think of the most egregious act someone could commit. That's right, the bad guys killed John's dog. His dog, the poor little beagle, was just a puppy. For a lot of people, watching a movie where people are hurt or killed can be tough but tolerable. But for those same people, watching a movie where the dog dies is another story. Keep watching to hear more about the John Wick movies, how extreme they are, and the times the plot simply went too far. In order to understand why these movies are written the way they are, we need to take a closer look at their origins. The team behind this story wanted to make a movie that appears on the outside to be a trope-heavy, loud but empty action film. Think Fast and the Furious or Jason Bourne. But what they actually created was a surprisingly deep story with extreme plot beats and some pretty impressive world building. The reason for this switcheroo was simply to catch audiences off guard in order to create a word-of-mouth marketing campaign. Therefore, this was the perfect franchise to experiment with rather extra moments in the films, and not to mention the camera work, the choreography, and the performances. Those were all excellent as well, making the too far moments we discussed today almost forgivable. The next moment that was a bit too far happens again in the first film as John goes on his rampage to avenge his poor little pup, Daisy. Around the third act, he arrives at what is called the Red Circle. This is the bad guy's home base. The movie takes a dark turn pretty much right away when John arrives. He disposes of two guards in a gruesome fashion. One of them is stabbed through the ear and the other is drowned in a sink. In a sink. He continues to move through the Red Circle, killing everyone he comes across. This sequence is not only gory, it's expertly choreographed and creative in the kills. It's not just some random gunplay and Keanu jumping around, parkouring around bullets. You see, Keanu using martial arts, reloading his gun while kicking the spit out of enemies, and again, the camera work is incredible. Even if you aren't a fan of action films, the action sequences in these films are, at the very least, entertaining. Another scene has the action reaching almost comical proportions. John is fleeing from the bad guys and finds himself seemingly cornered. He looks around, trying to figure out a way out of his predicament. He decides to reverse his vehicle, slamming into the enemy cars. In doing so, he accidentally runs over a bad guy on foot who ends up being launched up onto the top of his car. John, not missing a beat, takes out his gun and shoots the man through the roof of the car. Absolutely wild. The second film, John Wick Chapter 2, really amps up the insanity. At one point in the film, John Wick goes into the Westville World Trade Center, all while being serenaded by a street violinist, providing the score for the sequence. The classy music stands at a stark contrast with the action. The gun battle that ensues is hilarious because it happens in broad daylight with New Yorkers all around. Wick kills a man with a pencil. If you want to see how that happens, you'll have to watch the movie because we can't do it justice here. We have mentioned the choreography of the action sequences a few times. Did you know that Keanu Reeves did a ton of weapons training in order to prepare for this role? While watching the films, it's easy to see that he did. Some of the fighting scenes are so precise they resemble an intricate dance more than they do a fight. In the second film, there is a scene where Wick goes through 3 different guns. He has a sniper rifle, which runs out of ammo, then he pulls out his pistol, then he pulls out a shotgun, and all of this happens in less than a minute. Wow, that weapons training certainly seems to have paid off. Audiences ate this up. It remains one of the most famous sequences in the franchise. One funny thing about a movie that reaches these heights of extremism is that if any one aspect of the film reaches a certain point, it tips over into camp. If you aren't familiar, the short version of camp is that it takes something real and exaggerates it to levels of absurdism until it becomes funny. Susan Sontag famously wrote an essay about what camp is and what it means. You can't camp about something you don't take seriously. You're not making fun of it, you're making fun out of it. You're expressing what's basically serious to you in terms of fun and artifice and elegance. All of this is to say, campiness is hard to define, but it's one of those things where you know it when you see it. The second John Wick film takes things even further than the first, and it does evolve into pure camp a few times.
Gentlemen, do I need to remind you that there will be no business conducted on the Continental grounds?
One such instance is with Lawrence Fishburne's Bowery King. The character takes his time with his lines, sounding out his vowels like Alan Rickman as Professor Snape in Harry Potter.
Pull my gun, shoot you in the back and die, or keep the pressure on my neck.
Fishburne looks off into the distance after a conversation and solemnly says, to no one in particular, "Somebody please get this man a gun." Groan and eye roll included. Camp. The beauty of camp, assuming that audiences can sense it, is that the performers can have so much fun leaning into it. We think Fishburne understood the assignment. The John Wick films, specifically the second and third installments, can reach levels of absurdity that not only signify camp, but parody. One such example is when John kills a man with a book. How, you may be asking? He shoves a book into an enemy's mouth before driving his palm through the back of his head. See what I mean about the absurdity tipping over into parody? In the third film, in a scene that is touted as one of the most famous of the franchise, John and an enemy have a knife-throwing battle. It's almost reminiscent of darts, the way John throws the knives at one another. At one point, in a particularly gruesome part of the scene, John stabs someone through the eye. Gross. Anyway, I think that's enough. There are undoubtedly more examples of absurdity in these films, but I believe we've covered the major ones. What do you think? Have you seen these movies? Do you enjoy the campiness of this franchise? If you do, camp is a very fun rabbit hole to explore. We would love to hear what you think. Please leave a comment below with your favorite scene, your favorite character, your favorite kill, or even your favorite campy movie. Please don't forget to like our video and subscribe to the channel. We will see you all in the next one.